Good morning. How are y'all doing today? My name is Kathleen and I'm the dyer behind Good Needle Yarn Co. Today we are going to dye some yarn. The colorway is going to be Potting Mix, which is a beautiful neutral different shades of brown. I'm going to show you how I dye all of my layers. And first, before I do that, I'm going to show you how I mix up my dye stock because I'm out of the darker brown that I need to use. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. All right, I'm going to head on over to the other camera. I don't know what the heck I'm doing, but we'll see. All right, there we go. Okay, I'm going to be mixing up one of my dye stocks. When you get your dyes from whomever you buy them from, whether they're Dharma or Jacquard or any of the other acid dyes, they come in powders, and so they need to be mixed with water. Well, you can apply them directly, but I mix them with water so that I can control a little bit better the amount of dye that's going on each skein. And and we can get into the math of the whole dyeing thing another time if you want. But basically the way I consider it, or the way I think of it, is that a dye stock is it's the concentration of water versus the powder. So obviously if you have a lot of water and a little bit, then it's going to be less dilute. I mean, it's going to be more diluted. It's going to be less concentrated. If you have less water and a lot of dye, then it's going to be a lot more concentrated. Now, if you just take some dye, some powder, and throw it into a bunch of water, and you don't really know how much you have of each, it's kind of hard for you to then replicate that. If you would like to replicate this, like this colorway, like we're making potting mix, I want to be able to replicate that. So kind of a good baseline to start at is what is called a 1% depth of shade. And what that means is for every 100 milliliters of water that you use, you're going to use 1 gram of dye. And then that's kind of a good baseline. You know how much you have, and then if you want it to be a little bit darker, you're going to use more of the dye stock. If you want it to be a little bit more dilute, you're going to use less of the dye stock, if that makes any sense. So I'm going to be mixing up a dye stock of this darker brown that I'm going to be using, which is my 3rd layer. And so the first thing I do is I measure the amount of water that I'm going to use, which I guess I could have had ready. It would have made sense. It's going to be loud for a second. I'm turning the water on. Okay. I do have a scale that I use. I prefer to measure things in milliliters as opposed to, imperial measurements, tablespoons or cups or whatever it is. So I'm going to go ahead and put 600 milliliters of water here. Okay. And since I have 600 milliliters of water, I'm going to need to have 6 grams of this dye. Now, whenever you're using dye powders, it's important that you use a respirator mask so that you're not inhaling any of the powders because they're very, very fine. So you're not going to be able to understand me for a little bit. But I am going to tell you before I put this on that I have this little, it's like a little jewelry scale, which you can measure very small amounts, very light amounts. And I'm going to measure out 6 grams of dye. Let me go ahead and put my mask on. Okay. Okay, now that the powder is in liquid, so it's not going to be dispersing in the air, you can go ahead and take your mask off. Now, this particular color, the powder itself is very fine and dilutes very easily. I don't know if I said divide, but anyway. So basically, all you need to do is you just need to put it in, shake it up just a little bit, and then that's dispersed in the water. Now, some of the colors that you do, one in particular, if you're using a bright yellow-ish kind of color, it gets kind of clumpy and it doesn't dissolve really easily. This is just, by the way, a little bit of the darker brown that I have left over, so I'm just going to be mixing it in with this so that I have everything in one container. But one thing that I use if I'm having problems getting the dye to dissolve is I have a little it's like one of those little mixy things that people use to like foam their milk, like in their lattes or their cappuccinos or whatever. So you can just stick it in and it's like a little manual blender kind of a thing, I guess. And that helps dissolve the dyes. All right. Okay. Let me go ahead and adjust this camera just a little bit. There we go. Now we can see all 4 of the pans. I know, Carrie, it's funny, isn't it? Yeah, we had a cold front go through last night. There was kind of these like storms that were all around the area, and but it's beautiful today. All right. Just to repeat what I had said, we're dyeing the potting mix colorway today, which our friend Val has ordered a DK skein and also a sparkly DK skein. So I'm going to go ahead and dye this on all 4 of the bases that I use. I have the Everyday Sock, the DK Everyday, which is one of the ones that she's getting. This is the sparkly sock, and this is the sparkly DK. And I've already started some of this before I went on this morning. so that you can kind of see like all of the different stages of them. Because when I add a layer of dye, I like for it to set for at least 15 minutes before I readjust the yarn and put the next layer on. So if we were to do that, we'd be here for like an hour and we'd be staring at, staring at pans of yarn, like kind of watching paint dry. So this one right here that has no dye on it, I'm going to go ahead and put the first layer of brown on. Now there are 3 different colors of brown, so that the tones are a little bit different. And the way, a kind of general rule of thumb, of course, rules are kind of made to be broken, but I tend to do put the lighter colors on first and kind of go light, medium, and then kind of the darker colors at the end. So this first brown that I'm putting on is a pretty light and dilute brown. It's kind of a little bit more of kind of a grayer, taupier kind of brown. So I'm going to go ahead and pour that on. And once I have it on, I kind of squish it down just a little bit so that some of the dye that I just poured on kind of hits the water and kind of disperses a little bit. And so it's going to kind of, put some of that lighter brown color kind of on the inside and, anyway. And then we'll just go ahead and let that sit for 15 minutes. Okay, so this pan right here that has the DK, this already had this layer put on, and then I've already rearranged the yarn. So it's ready for the second layer. And the second layer is obviously it's a brown color also, but it's a little bit more of a warmer kind of chocolate brown color. So I'm just trying to kind of build the layers up and add more depth with the different colors of brown, as opposed to just using, one color brown and, having everything kind of be the same. Okay. I'm not sure if you can see me or not. No, probably not. But I'm just measuring out 50 milliliters of this dye. Okay, so this is how much of the dye. And I'm going to go ahead and dilute that by adding, filling the cup up basically with water, just so that it's a little bit easier to pour and it'll extend a little bit longer. You can see the difference in the different browns that I'm using here. Again, I'm going to push this down and let it let that kind of absorb for another 15 minutes. And then after we finish this here, then I'll go ahead and finish this up later. Okay, so these 2 sparkly ones that I have right here, they already have the first 2 layers on. So they have this lighter dark, the lightest taupey kind of color. They have this kind of chocolate brown color. And now we're ready for the final layer, which is the brown that we just mixed up. So I'm going to go ahead and rearrange the yarn. So what I do, I don't know if you can see the sparkly or not, but I just love a good sparkly yarn. I use these, they're reusable nylon zip ties so that I can undo them and reuse them. So what I do when I pull it out is I kind of readjust the yarn about a quarter of the way down the skein or whatever, just so that when I'm putting it in, it's going in a different, it's a different yarn is going to be on top here to get dyed, if that makes any sense. Because I don't want everything to, all of the dye to be hitting the same places. Otherwise, it's not going to be as evenly dispersed, I guess is what I'm trying to say. All right, this is your yarn here, Bella. My dog drinks water like twice a day, and of course chooses this particular moment to drink. She's a small little dog, and she's the loudest thing. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and, obviously this is off camera, but I'm going to go ahead and pour out, measure the dye that we need for these last two cans right here. And I'm using about the same amount of dye that I used on the last layer. Except with this darker color, as you can see, it's about the same amount of dye as the last one. But instead of diluting the whole cup, I'm going to only dilute about halfway. Because I want this color to stay a little bit more localized and not get us dispersed quite as much. So you can see this is a very, very dark brown, kind of a, this is a little bit more kind of reddish undertones, kind of like the last one, but it's definitely a darker version. The reason why I dilute them less, the darker the colors are, is because they, the darker colors obviously will overtake or can overtake the colors that are already there. So I don't want it to be as, I don't want there to be as much, like physically as much in here. So now I'm just going to push this under a little bit. This helps some of the, like you can see some of these, some of the whiter colors here. I mean, which is fine. I think with this colorway, there should be some of the white, but it'll just help some of these lighter colors pick up some of the darker color that kind of dispersed into the water. But you'll still see these kind of darker brown areas right here. Okay. All right, I'm gonna head back over and check the chat and see what we're up to. All right, I am back. Yeah, on camera that dark brown almost looks kind of black, which isn't. It's not. But you can see from here I can't even quite see what the heck I'm doing. But obviously the three different colors of the brown. All right, y'all are gonna have to give me just a second. I need to go run and grab a skein of this. Obviously it didn't plan very well. I'll be right back. Hey guys, I'm back. Okay, I wanted to show you how this yarn ends up dyeing out once it's finished and dried and ready to be reskeined. Okay, so this is it right here. Here, that's a little bit better from there. You can see this, the lighter kind of taupey-ish colors like we have up in the top right of that, of the pan right there. And then you can see this kind of reddish brown, which is this kind of second layer that we have down in that bottom right. And then you can also see these darker, these kind of darker browns through here, which is these darker browny blacks that we put in kind of at the end. You could have held, that would have made entirely too much sense. You know, I've got to tell you, if I had to pick a color, you know, just a basic color that I really, if I had to say I did not like, it would be brown. It's has never been one of my favorite colors. It's never been anything that I've worn. It's not anything that I've ever really used in, you know, any of the other art or anything that I've done. But when I made this, I developed the Spring Bulbs collection like last spring, I guess it was. And, you know, I had all of the beautiful, the pinks and the oranges and the kind of bluey purples and, you know, kind of all of the flower colors that you see like first thing in spring. And I really wanted to do a kind of neutral color that kind of went with all that. And so I was like, you know, I'll just go ahead and get out of my head and just, you know, play with the browns and see what I could come up with. And I've got to tell you, I think it's beautiful. It's turned out to be one of my favorite colors. And it's obviously it's neutral. It'll go with like all of those different colors with most different colors. But it still is very it's very interesting, and it's not kind of, I guess, kind of flat, which is what I think of as brown sometimes. But I have a pair of socks that I have already knitted up, which I used this color, and you can see the kind of the lighter taupier colors. You can see the medium kind of reddish brown colors, and then you can see kind of that dark brownish color through there. So yeah, I showed the I don't know if that's even something that you can, I don't know if you can even add photos to this. I don't think you really can, but I'll put it up on Facebook and Instagram if that's all right with you, Val. She showed me a picture of the pattern that she's planning on using, she's going to be using the Peter Rabbit yarn, and then also using this this potting mix, and I think it's going to be really nice, really cute. Thank you. Yeah, Carrie, I did too. One of the problems that I had when I was, when I was first learning to knit and to crochet, and when you first start and you buy you go to Michael's and you go to Hobby Lobby and you buy the yarn from there because it's a lot less expensive and you don't really know what you're doing, but then as you start to kind of get into wanting to use some yarn that's a little bit higher quality and the colors are a little bit more interesting, you start looking at hand-dyed yarns, and I had such a difficult time being able to look at a skein and knowing and being able to figure out what that's going to look like. That just may be my problem, I don't know. So when I started dyeing yarn, first I started dyeing yarn just for myself because I wanted some hand-dyed yarn. And when I decided that I was gonna start this business and start selling my yarn, it was really important to me that I was able to have samples worked up for the yarn, so that if somebody wants to see, how's that gonna work out? What's it gonna look like? Because look, it's an investment when you're buying yarn like this. It's not inexpensive, and you want to make sure that it's gonna, that it's gonna do what you want it to do. So, anyway, that's kind of what my thought is. All right. You know what? I think I'm gonna go ahead and do another layer on this top one up here. We've got a couple of minutes still. And then change camera again. The lighter colors tend to not take quite as long to absorb and set. So some of these the lighter ones, you don't have to let set quite as long before you can put on the next layer. So I can show you again how I rearrange the yarn. Then I kind of plop it all down so that it's not even and that some of the lighter colors are up towards the top so that they get hit first with the next layer. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and measure the second layer over here, which is this. I know you can't see it. Which is again is going to be about 50 milliliters of dye, and I'm then going to dilute that with the rest of this cup. Yeah, I think I screwed that up. I did. That's what I get for thinking. Ugh. All right, I'm gonna come back. So I put the wrong brown on. But that's okay. When I do things like that, which is really not all that uncommon actually, I'll let this sit and see what I end up with. And that's kind of when I start playing with other colors. Like, I think what I'll probably do is I got that really light brown and then that really dark brown. And I mean, I could just put the medium brown on top of it, except it wouldn't look quite right. It wouldn't, I don't want to say it wouldn't look quite right because that's not really fair. But yeah, don't worry about it, Val. I don't know what's going on with this. I'm not sure that you can actually put photos in these comments, so. But I think what I'll probably do is maybe take a yellow and make it really, really dilute so that it just kind of a wash over top of that and see how it looks. Yeah, I think I'll try it out. Luckily, Val, that wasn't one of yours, so yours are good. But anyway, yeah, I will, I have the photo that you sent me, so I should be able to pull that and stick that up. But it's really pretty. I think it's gonna be really cool. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and run and so I can make sure that I don't mess up the rest of this yarn. And I will definitely, you know what I'll do? I think I'll put up I'll video what I'm doing when I'm, like what I was talking about with that yellow, just to, I mean, it may end up looking terrible and like really ugly, but you know, as long as I've got things that aren't, as long as it's not gonna, you know, this top left yarn, it's not gonna be the colorway that I was planning on making because I did the things in the wrong order. So I'm gonna go ahead and use that as an opportunity to test different colors or whatever that I wouldn't ordinarily do that way. I mean, worst case, if they're really ugly, then I'll use it for like waste yarn when I'm like on my sock machine or whatever. It's not like it's gonna go to waste, but you know, who knows? It might be beautiful and it might end up being a, you know, making a new colorway kind of like that. So we will see. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for staying this whole time. And thank you for those of you who are coming on and looking at this later on YouTube and also or on Facebook. And I am planning on going live again next week at Wednesday at 10 o'clock Eastern, just like I did today. And if there's, oh, of course, Val, I love doing it. If there's any particular colors that you might like to see, if there's anything you might like to see me play with, then I know, Carrie. At least I have a video of it. So worst case, yeah, I'll be able to go back and see what it is that I did, so I can repeat it again. But all right, y'all enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you next week. Bye.